Hello, I'm Jason Isaacson. I'm happy to welcome you to another issue of AJC Perspectives, and I'm very fortunate that I'm here with Dr. Soner Cagaptay, the noted Turkish-American historian and political scientist, director of the Turkish Research Program at the Washington Institute for Near East Policy, and author, if I could say, of the definitive political biographies of President Erdogan of
Thank
Turkey.
you, Jason. You're very kind.
Soner, there's a great deal that I'd like to discuss with you, but let's start with President Erdogan.
Sure.
Your second book on Erdogan's Empire, Turkey, and the Politics of the Middle East, really captures what I'm hoping that we'll discuss in today's issue of AJC Perspectives. The role that Turkey is playing now in the Middle East, President Erdogan's vision and ambitions and challenges in the region, and how the region has responded and is likely to respond in the future.
Absolutely. My book, when I wrote it, was published just about 6 years ago. It was a description of Turkey's foreign policy changes under Erdogan. And I consider Erdogan to be among the inventors of make your country great politics in this century. It's a political model that other leaders have copied. Turkey was an empire only 3 generations ago, and countries that were great empires have an inflatable and awful malleable sense of their heyday. And this comes with a propensity to be inspired by leaders to speak to this heyday and embody this narrative. Many countries have kind of embraced this imperial revival politics or make your country great politics. India is an example under Modi. You could say China is a similarly power that is making a
great
comeback.
Civilization.
Absolutely. Even the United Kingdom, I think the Brexit vote is the Erdogan equivalent of UK politics, where UK voters, some of them said, no, we don't want to be a country folding under the EU, we want to become a great country again. Let's leave the EU. In Turkey, the equivalent of that was Erdogan. Until Erdogan came to power, Turkey considered itself a European country, pursued accession to the European Union, and considered itself part of the West. Erdogan said, I want Turkey to be a great country again, and I have no patience to wait for EU accession to happen for Turkey. I'd rather make Turkey a star power nation by and through leadership of Muslims, starting with the Middle East and other regions. So he launched into some policy initiatives in the Middle East, taking advantage of Arab uprisings. Initially, these did not do well for Turkey because Turkey ended up being completely isolated. But Erdogan is also a master of resets. He has since reset these relationships that failed, including with Egypt, UAE, Saudi Arabia, and with Israel for a while. And now Turkey is perhaps a country that is, I would say, recognized as a middle power that makes up for missing political clout with hard power. And that also is a swing state that kind of plays between Russia and the United States and everybody else.
But go back in history to Turkey's role in the region. Why is it that the Arab states would not look to Turkey as a leader of the region?
So one of the reasons the first foreign policy kind of endeavor, make Turkey a star power nation in the Middle East through leadership of Muslims, failed, is that this policy did not take into account imperial legacies, not as they are viewed by Turks, but as they are viewed by Arabs. And the mastermind of the foreign policy was Erdogan's foreign minister at the time, Ahmet Davutoglu, who then became his prime minister. And it was really in the era, I would say, roughly from 2010 to roughly 2018 that Turkey kind of embraced this policy, where it thought that it would return to the Middle East. I'm using return in quotes because perhaps Turkey, because the Ottoman Empire had ended, its return to the Middle East therefore is not possible. But Turkey's return as an actor to the Middle East came with the idea that Turkey could kind of go around and tell the Arabs what to do, and Arabs would listen to Turkey. That didn't happen.
Is there any nostalgia for Ottoman Empire in the Arab world?
Huge amounts. And I think here what Davutoglu and Erdogan missed is that just because they're Muslims, or most of them are Muslims, Arabs are not going to listen to Turks, because Arabs look at Ottoman legacy much like, let's say, Serbs look at Ottoman legacy in the Balkans. They see it as the former colonial overlord. They don't want it to come and boss them around. So Turkish policies were, I think, seen as patronizing during the Arab uprisings, and also singularly ideological. Turkey supported in the Arab uprisings, when you saw protest movements in Egypt and elsewhere, not various factions, which is what you should do if you're engaged in statecraft and you're going to interfere in affairs of countries. You don't put all your money behind one horse. You distribute your bets, right? You support different actors. But Turkey did not support all actors. It supported just one actor, the Muslim Brotherhood, which was really not a smart way of betting, because if you're betting all your money on one horse, if that horse wins, you win big. But if it loses, you win everything. That's exactly what happened.
Yeah.
The Brotherhood was ousted from power as soon as it came to power in Egypt and elsewhere, and Turkish influence withered away. And the new government in Egypt started to see Turkey as a mortal security threat. And the allies of this government, from Israel to Jordan to Saudi Arabia to United Arab Emirates, also started to view Turkey with great consternation. That was the picture around 2018. Erdogan got rid of Davutoglu, who was jettisoned from Erdogan's party,
Right.
and then went after a number of resets. And this is where you give Erdogan credit as a crafty politician of international affairs. He's able to do 180s, and he's made quite an impressive comeback from a position where Turkey was completely alone and isolated in the Middle East, had almost no friends, opposite of Erdogan's program of making Turkey a star power nation, almost no friends with the exception of Qatar, 2018. Fast forward to today, Turkey has reset with the Saudis, Emiratis. It has recently taken over through its proxies the Assad government in Damascus out. And you could say that its fortunes are rising. It's also influential, having won through its proxies, civil wars in Libya, and perhaps also in Sudan. So you could say that Erdogan should be quite happy, despite his initial failures, that he's been able to make a comeback.
Fascinating. Now, he healed the rupture with Egypt. The relationship with Saudi Arabia and with the United Arab Emirates, some of that was those countries seeking economic opportunities in a Turkey that was suffering economic problems. Am I right?
That's correct. So something really unfortunate for Erdogan is that in 2019, Turkey's economy went into recession for the first time. Unfortunate, but perhaps partly Erdogan's doing, because Erdogan switched to a new political system in 2018. He had run out of terms as president. He changed his job definition. He called himself executive-style president as opposed to just president. A new constitutional definition.
Don't give any ideas to the guy in Washington.
If there are term limits, everybody's looking into inspiration. I'm a great believer in term limits. I feel like there's a reason why great politicians, even the best ones, should basically say, I'm done, thank you very much.
Right.
That's not Erdogan's style. So he decided that he would get himself couple more terms, renamed his job as executive-style president, but that also meant that policymaking became uber-personalized and hyper-centralized to Erdogan's palace in Ankara. He put his son-in-law in charge of the economy. The son-in-law, wrongly, for anyone who took Economics 101, believed that high interest rates cause inflation and not the other way around. So he fought inflation rates by artificially suppressing interest rates. That cost Turkey's economy billions of dollars. The lira lost much of its value. The economy went into recession in 2018. Erdogan's party lost elections for mayoral races in all big cities the following year. Then the pandemic happened, and the economy went into another recession. And that's when Erdogan decided to pivot, mainly to benefit from financial inflows coming from wealthy Gulf countries to jumpstart the economy. Turkey's economy is resource poor. It needs financial inflows to grow again. Right. And Erdogan has relied greatly on Saudi Arabia and United Arab Emirates. And I think those countries saw an opportunity. Turkey was cheap. You buy when it's cheap, and they decide to invest. And they also saw that, especially the Saudis, this is an opportunity to kind of work with Turkey again. I think the Emiratis are more skeptical. They still see Turkey as an ideological threat. Although Turkish support to the Brotherhood has for the most part ended, Turkey still supports Hamas. So you could argue that even after the October 7 attacks, there's still an informal alliance between the Emiratis and the Israelis. They see a lot of regional issues through the same lens. Mm-hmm. So I feel like Israelis and Emiratis both look at Turkish relations with Hamas and find it quite problematic. I think the Saudis have a more transactionalist view of their ties with Turkey, and they also realize that they can do business with Turkey going forward.
Also, I think they recognize that it's a fabulous country, whatever the government.
It's a great place to visit. As I always joke with people that, if you've never been to Turkey, that you should, but you also make sure that you like eggplant, aubergine, because Turkey has a million ways to prepare eggplant, and you'll starve if you don't like it.